of the things you said in your article, I'm pulling it up because it was so, I mean, there's just so many pull quotes from this, Caitlin, as always. But you brought up this idea of Robert Bly, whom I had not thought about since what, the 90s?
Yeah.
You said, okay, here it was. You brought Robert Bly, and you note that Bly was part of the movement that coined the term toxic manhood, the toxicity being office work and too much time around bossy women, and the antidote being a return to the original state of dude nature, roaring, beating drums. So Bly wrote that book, like you go off and you go in the woods, you start beating drums and reconnecting with your masculinity. And then
Well, he was
and then
kind
you wrote, but then you said this was not a low T group. This was a group that had been robbed and diminished by radical feminism, and they proved it by defecating on the floors and tracking their own filth through the hallways. And then you added they were dazed by power and limited in their conception of what to do with it. So I'm sort of interested in this as sort of like men, this idea of these men, largely white, getting mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore movement.
hmm Well, what Bly was responding to, people have picked up the phrase toxic masculinity, and they mean it a man who's dangerous or violent with women, or, gets together with other, adolescent males and does something violent. But it was the opposite. He was saying that office work and the rising women's movement and these sorts of things had separated men from some kind of eternal nature that they had.
Mhm.
And he was kind of, instead of sort of saying, let's think about what it is like to be, a man in the 90s, he was saying we have to go all the way back to sort of prehistoric times and like
Right.
beat our animal skin drums and whatever. But he was onto something, which is that men, particularly white, all men, have been really unrooted, in a way that's been intentional and in a way that hasn't been intentional. They've really been unrooted from their established roles and purpose in life. And there's just a sense that they feel, a lot of men feel it's not wrong. If they had just been in the Capitol protesting peacefully and talking about the issues that they're upset about, extreme media bias, maybe I don't know, affirmative action changing the landscape of their kids' college admission or something, it would have been an interesting series of points that they were making. But when they broke into the Capitol, in a way, it was the ultimate culmination of the Robert Bly movement, because they were, there's always that thing you read in text that, men needed women because we civilized men. Men had to be civilized to get a woman, you
Mhm.
had to adhere to some, and all of politeness. You read these like Claude Levi Strauss and everybody, politeness itself developed as a way for men to impress women and ultimately get sex from them.
Right.
So there was this idea that women were civilizing men in this way, and they were fighting against it in the ugliest. It was as though it was like the movie of the Trump administration reached the final ultimate conclusion, where these men had been relieved of everything that made them civilized,
Mhm.
and they didn't respect America. They didn't respect our elected representatives. They didn't respect cops. They hated cops. They hate the Republican Party.
Yeah, so
You
much for
know,
the law and order party.
Yo.